Ladies and gentlemen, debate is not debate if it's not on the Great Debaters Contest. I am your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. In a bid to improve healthcare in Africa, the motion on the table today is healthcare should be privatized for improved services in Africa.
Proposing this motion, we have Stafford Boys High School, who promised to bring their A game to this debate.
And opposing the motion is Naivasha girls, who also say they'll give Stafford a run for their money.
Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes to make a statement.
Let me acknowledge the presence of our guest of honor amongst the crowd, and that is common sense. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Irungu, protagonist from the Stafford High. We learned in kindergarten that the beginning is a good place to start. So let me start by defining terms. Healthcare. What is healthcare? Healthcare is an organized provision of medical care to an individual or a community. Privatization. Privatization is the transfer of businesses, industries, or services from a public to a private ownership or control. Africa. Africa is the continent you and me live in. It is the second largest continent in the world, occupying 30.3 kilometers squared. The goodness that you have witnessed was proudly sponsored by the Oxford Dictionary. Let me explain something. When I say private, I do not mean one man or one woman. I mean a group, missionaries. I mean non-governmental organizations. I mean people or a group of people who think that healthcare should be a primary concern in our world. Let me start by my first point, which goes to the government. It goes without question that our government has politicized healthcare. It has remained an empty promise since time immemorial. Let's go back to 2000 in the Millennium Summit of UN. Yes, the goals were to be achieved by 2015. But we elect presidents twice that year. That is, we elect a president after every 5 years. So those are 2 governments that failed. Different presidents, different government. Someone explain to me, does that mean if the government fails, healthcare should fail? No. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and desperate measures need desperate actions. In 2000, the Millennium Summit, there were 3 involving healthcare. One of them is reduced maternal health. The second one was reduced mortality and combat of HIV and AIDS, malaria, and other diseases not achieved. The government went on to cover up for 2015. What did they do? They wanted to give us contaminated polio vaccine from Nigeria. Let me get this straight. Polio is immunized 6 to 8 weeks. My fellow brothers and sisters, this kid has seen light 42 days only, and he or she is regarded paralyzed. On April 25th, 2018, a surgery was performed, a milestone, by Professor Stanley Ominde. What did he say? That the surgery of a foot reattachment took place in Coptic Hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, it is break time. Thank you.
First opposer, you have 3 minutes.
Oh my. I simply cannot believe this. You know what happened? My neighbor. Just a few days ago, my neighbor ran away from home. You know what was the problem? His house was on fire. Yes, his house was on fire, and he ran away. Now, by running away, how have you solved the problem? You have done absolutely nothing to solve that problem. Well, for the sake of my dear neighbor, I, a Sunday Angela, straight outer the Queen's Dynasty, Naivasha girls, is here to strongly say no to the motion healthcare should be privatized for improved services in Africa. Now, what is healthcare? Let me gen you up. Healthcare is the act of taking preventative or necessary medical procedures to improve a person's well-being. Privatize, transfer a business, industry, or service from public to private ownership and control. Now, they have talked about the problems in the public health sector. Yes, there are problems. Poor leadership. Now, do we really need to privatize for there to be good leadership? Of course not. Let us copy a country I love so well, South Africa. 40% was allocated to health, yet serving 80%. You know what they did? They split into health regions and health districts, and they employed foreign doctors. And our president is doing just that, so I don't get what my opponents are telling me today. Then we talk of lack of funds. Why are our poor countries straining to offer affordable and quality health care? This takes me back to number one, poor governance. It leads to corruption and thus wastage, theft, and inefficiencies. Now, Kenya's GDP on health, the money allocated to the Kenyan health system is increasing annually. This is according to the africacheck.org of May 2016. But look at our friends in Nigeria. The money allocated to the health sector is decreasing annually. Now, where are we headed with such a nation? But there is hope, there is a solution. Let us add more money to the health sector. Then, we talk of wrong diagnosis and treatment. Did you know that the providers in the private sector more frequently violate medical standards of practice and have poor patient outcomes? Well, if you didn't know, that is what is happening. Because these private partners do not want to give you medication for your illness, they simply want your money. And you should be wise enough to know that, I believe. So, you know of the story of the girl who went to Pope John Paul Huruma Health Center, the story on 29th May 2017. And you know what happened to her? A tooth process turned out to be defective. She was left with a needle in her tooth, in her gums. What does that tell you? It is poor. The sector is poor. The private sector is poor. Now, my friends, my opponents, why do you start a business? Judges, why would you start a business? You don't need to answer me. I will answer you. I will tell you why you start a business. You are a doctor. I come to you. I need you to heal me. But will you heal me like this? With nothing? You won't. But I believe you will now heal me, right? Yes. Think about that.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
A great leader is one who moves past the arguments, past the criticism, and past the debate to come up with a logical solution that we can all agree and understand. The name is Alan Storm, Stafford Boys. My opposer mentioned a point on profits. I would like to state that most private hospitals were started on humanitarian grounds by non-profit organizations. Non-profit organizations. If I may give an example of Coptic Hospital, which was started by the Coptic Orthodox Church, is that if you happen to pass by their website, if you find time to pass by their website, I found one of their leading statements is in the book of Matthew 25, verse 40. It says, "What you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Surely, are these the people you're saying want to steal our money? Are these the people you do not want to trust in? How many times has the government failed us? How many times have we seen our nurses on the road shouting the all-known so well chant, Haki yetu? When will these nurses, when will our doctors receive their rights? These people have families to fend for. They may have a child in school, but they're not well paid enough. Then you'd send the same person to hospital to treat me, and you think that person is going to be 100%? Is he going to help my problem or think of his problem? Which comes first? On a normal human, it's always me before you. They also mentioned something about South Africa. In South Africa, private and public run in parallel, with public taking most of the share. But that's not the problem. The problem is 79% of South African doctors work in private hospitals. Public healthcare services in South Africa is understaffed. When are we going to stop banging our heads on a wall expecting it to move? I think it's time to take the logical road and see that we have tried enough times. We have put our lives, we have put our families, we have put our future on the line too much with the public hospitals. It is time to receive what we deserve. It is time to receive good health care, and that is privatize.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Now, my darling audience, the only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing. Now, my name is Gloria Pendo Walioli, here to represent Naivasha girls, opposing the motion that states healthcare should be privatized for improved services in Africa. Now, to my brothers, I would like to tell you that you should not come here. Don't even think of stepping on this stage and telling me about bettered services. Well, let me tell you, we are also bettering our services. By this, I mean Al Jazeera News, March 15th, 2017, Ouma Oluga from KMPDU stated that doctors' hours will be reduced to 40 hours per week, and they will be compensated for extra hours. Now, this is bettering of services. Plus, about corruption, which I know you want to mention, our president, the well-able Uhuru Kenyatta, mentioned during our Madaraka Day this year that he will fight corruption with every fiber in his being. Now, this is something that I support because this shows determination and this is distinction, which is something that we need in our country. Now, first, can Africa really afford these services? I would like to give us an example of South Africa, whose private sector has been compared to nations such as France, UK, and Germany. Now, these nations are vast in their GDP production. Now, this is the gross domestic production levels in a nation. Now, if South Africa itself is suffering and is trying to keep up with nations such as France, what about Kenya? What about Lesotho? Now, Lesotho has low income levels, and it is the third highest in HIV levels in this world. Now, Lesotho tried privatization. They did. But what happened? They completely failed. They failed miserably. They had a model hospital, one single model hospital called Queen Mamohata Memorial Hospital, and this is a fact. It was supported by the IFC. It was supported by the IFC. And what has it done? It has threatened to swamp the economy of Lesotho, the whole of a nation such as Lesotho, by one single model hospital. And underline, it is a model hospital. It is a model privatization hospital. This was tested and it has completely failed. Do you really want to tell me that you want Africa to fail in the same way Lesotho is being swamped? Is this what we really want for our nation? Is it? Secondly, getting trust and confidence in from the citizens of the nation. Now listen to this, 52% admitted in the Polish country that they have informal payment. Now in Kenya, we call this hongo. Is this really what we want from the private sector? To Kenya, I would love to tell this. Kenyans, please let us not privatize our nation because we will not be able to swim out of this swamp. We will not be able to. And I would like us to remember this. Kenya, Kenya, kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima.
The proposers have been asked, don't they think that privatization of the healthcare system will lead to fragmentation? The opposers have been asked, how sure are they that the money they want to be allocated to the public healthcare system will actually be used for its purpose? Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to answer the question.
Meeting this motion was like opening my first bottle of champagne. Supporting the motion was like taking it, drinking it sip by sip, and enjoying it. And that is why I, Peter Nganga, from Stafford Boys High School, I'm here to stand as a firm protagonist of the motion that states, healthcare should be privatized for improved services in Africa. Well, I'll start by answering the question posed by the audience. She asked how it may lead to fragmentation. Well, it is simple and basic knowledge that we have mission churches and hospitals and NGOs and tycoons who support the private sector. Do you think it can lead to fragmentation if you have these people supporting the private sector? Well, I don't think so. Why should we privatize healthcare? It is simple. I think the public healthcare sector has failed us immensely and terribly. At goal number 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. My fellow colleague has mentioned about the polio contamination in Nigeria and how the government used it. Do you expect the same government to achieve the goal number 3 of the SDGs, yet they cannot even ensure us of the lives of our infants? I mean, the younger generation, the future leaders of tomorrow. Do you honestly think this can work? Food for thought. We at Stafford Boys High School conducted a research on our staff members to be able to find out their NHIF coverage in hospitals. And we found out that 76.92% of the staff members will opt for private sectors, meaning that those who opted for public sectors were only 23.08%. Does this allude to anything? Well, why? What were the reasons for this? Reason number 1, they said professionalism in the private sectors. You cannot compare the professionalism in the private sectors to the public sectors. Reason number 2, time management. Less time is taken in the private sectors for you to be offered with services, quality services. Number 3, facilities are well equipped in the private sector and can be able to offer much better services to our patients. Reason number 4, availability of medicine. When you go to a public sector and after diagnosis, the doctor recommends for medicines. You go from chemist to chemist looking for medicines. What about the private sector? The private sector, the chemist is always available. So we should privatize these healthcare services. I think publicizing healthcare is a green snake in the grass, and that is why we at Stafford Boys High School, we are here not only to assist, but to kill the snake in the grass. Class dismissed. Thank you.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond to your question.
In my life, I have never seen melanin so deep. These are the words by Sauti Sol, and the moment you hear about melanin, you hear about Africa. You picture Africa. Africa is known as a dark continent, not because it doesn't have resources, not because its people are black, they have melanin, but because they fail to assess the problem at hand and reasonably come up with realistic methods to solve this problem. I go by the name Charlene Pascalio from the Naivasha Girls, here to deter the motion that states healthcare services in Africa should be privatized for improved services. To answer the question posed to me by the audience, I'd like to say that we did not say that healthcare is the only solution to our problems. We only say that you rechannel more funds to the healthcare, plus accountability, and the governments are fighting corruption. This will enable them to be accountable to these funds that are being channeled to the healthcare system. Question well answered. In 2015, the 193 countries of the United Nations sat down together and came up with Sustainable Development Goal. Sustainable Development Goal number 3 says that you should have good health and well-being. Let me pose a question to my worthy opponents that we are talking about good health of Africans. So telling me that you're privatizing Africans, the health sector in Africa is telling me that everything is shifting towards the private sector. Are you trying to tell me that all the efforts put by the government are going to be watered down the drain? I have a solution to all this: public-private partnership. We talk about Africa having inaccessibility to resources. We talk about Africa having a lot of problems with the healthcare system. But privatizing it is not the answer to our question. Privatizing it is burning a whole house that has rats. Will we be solving our issue at hand? Let me also send you to Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which talks about quality education, Sustainable Development number 1, which talks about no poverty, and number 2, which talks about zero hunger. Having no healthcare or least healthcare will lead to the workforce in Africa being less. So, simply put, we improve our healthcare system, it enables the adults to earn and the children to learn. Thank you.
Proposers, you have 1 minute to make a final statement.
At the beginning, the opposers mentioned something about a burning house. And I agree completely. Truly, our health sector is on fire. And honestly, there is nothing to salvage. The only thing we can do right now is hope for a helping hand that is here, the private health sector, to help us. Take, for example, the doctors at KNH who did one of the first leg reattachments in Coptic Hospital. These are doctors who knew what they were doing, but why didn't they do it at a public hospital? Because there were no resources. How can I go for more than 10 years studying medicine, specializing in medicine, going to a public hospital and not having resources to practice my art? How many times has publicizing failed? For example, Tanzania, the Ujamaa.
Proposers, you have 1 minute to make a final statement.
Audience, judges, my house is on fire. What do I do? Do I burn down the house? Or do I seek alternative methods of killing my rats? What the opposers is trying to tell us here is burning down our heart. I like to say that all our information that we have given you are quoted from Health Policy and Planning Journal of August 2014, Oxfam International of 2017. So, it is wise to acknowledge that the healthcare situation in Africa is wanting. I may not be a Mahatma Gandhi lookalike, but I share in him the spirit of being the change that we want. African governments are the only people who can go and solve this problem that we have in healthcare. Since the governments are democratic, they are for the people and by the people. And it is only they that are in a suitable position to give solutions to this method. To my worthy opponents, stop putting your eggs in one basket. Thank you.
I like the style, Stafford boys. We started class and we ended class, is it? That was a good creative way of doing it. Well done. What stands out for me, for you boys, is that you're very good speakers, and that is commendable. Nonetheless, what sometimes has to accompany any debate is pure arguments, and all arguments must be given evidence, and evidence is only given through the sources that you give us. So you had a lot of good arguments and a few evidence. And so that was quite costly. For the first speaker, I don't know why you decided not to look at us at all. You were communicating to something else. Well, that speaks a lot about your confidence on stage. Sometimes you want to develop that eye contact. It helps because you're communicating with us. Alan, very good speaker. And I think towards the end, you came and gave a very interesting analogy. But the question was, what was the source? Was it a fact or was it not a fact? And then the bell rang more than twice, so that was penalized. Peter, well, good job. That was commendable, all right? Naivasha girls, wow, that was a good battle. I think you started off very well. You're saying, listen, healthcare, no. Don't privatize this. Naivasha girls, the first speaker, the South African example. Did you give the citation? Because sometimes we want to check on the source of what you're talking about. And also that goes to Gloria because you also went down as well to South Africa. You gave the examples of what it could be prone, corruption, private hospitals for money and the likes. But I also want to applaud your confidence and the start of your team. Gloria, I think you gave a very, very powerful, you were outstanding actually for your team. And there was a lot of examples that you gave. But to point, I think the Lesotho one, which was perfectly well given. However, there were serious facts that didn't have a source. So I would ask you, where can I get the Lesotho examples? So that was penalized because of that. Time bad though as well. Charlene, good job. I think I love the SDG reference. There was a lot of SDG playing around here and there. And what happened is that you validated your submissions. So that was commendable. All the best to both teams. We'll wait for the results.
Esperanza, will you do us the honor?
Indeed. And now we get to the numbers. In a room full of opinions, do remember that nobody has the monopoly of being right. It's just a matter of style and sway. Stafford boys, the judges awarded you 69.5%. Let's give them a round of applause. Naivasha girls, the judges awarded you 71.6%, making you the winners of the debate.
Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to both teams. Remember, the debate does not end here. The conversation still continues on our social media platforms. The hashtag is GDC for SDGs. I have been your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. Catch you next time.